Hi everyone, and welcome to the finalist voting for the Maven Halloween Challenge. Today we'll be looking at the 5 entries that are up for the main prize, and we'll be evaluating them by using the challenge objective, which was to find the 3 different types of candy to give out this Halloween to make sure that you are the most popular house on the block. Now, as always, we'll consider each project as a whole, including the description, images, and meta reports. So let's get started.
Okay, so it's been a while since I've opened one of these sessions, and I'm going to really enjoy presenting Pascal's project this time around. So a couple of things that stood out in this project is, if you start reading through the About section, Pascal actually wrote a little bit of a story introduction where he paints a sort of idyllic picture in the neighborhood where he is talking about trick and treats with his neighbor Sally, and they're kind of having an argument where he's presenting his popularity data, and she, as a person who has been doing this for a long time, disagrees, and from that story stems his analysis. It's really very fun. I invite everybody to read through this. It's a lot of intelligent humor in there, but you might say that this wasn't a writing challenge, nor is it a part of the prompt, and you'd be right. But what Pascal does through that introductory story is 2 very important things. First, he paints the audience, right? So Sally in this story is basically a portrait of a person who would be the audience, a typical friendly neighbor who is giving away candy every year for a lot of years. That's one. And the other one is the criteria that he used to sort of do his analysis. If you check here, it says rating sugar, content, price, or popularity. So these are the criteria that he's diversifying by. Now, it may not be as scientific as some of the other entries that we have seen in this challenge and probably going to see in this finals vote, but there is something to be said about the wisdom of the audience, right? So Sally, as somebody who has been at this for a while, she knows what's important, right? And then from that point of view, he's moving forward. Now, after that, he goes into the nitty-gritty of what he actually did. So the cleaning of the data, the usual stuff that we see in these challenges, and the engine that he sort of chose to drive his finished product is the dynamic weighted harmonic mean. Harmonic mean is a type of arithmetic mean that's typically used when we are dealing with ratios, which, if you think about it, is the case here. We have sugar content, which is, again, percentage of sugar in a given weight of the candy. Price, again, clear. Popularity, which is defined here as a win percentage. So again, something that's very easily applicable. And the way he makes it dynamic is he is allowing users to assign weights to each of these categories. You can see he even shares some of the technical stuff here. There's some DAX code here. There is also a piece where he made a few iterations through what he was doing in order to enhance the popularity's influence, because in his first run, he found that the selection of candy ended up being either not sweet or not expensive, meaning that popularity didn't influence the final outcome as much. There is a walkthrough here on how he fixed that. But overall, if I'm going to actually move to his final product, which is extremely simple. So there are no charts, there's not anything here. Instead, what we have is a pure answer to the challenge prompt. What candy should you give away to be the most popular? And the only choice that we have is to sort of play with these slicers where we influence the weight of each of these categories that he, or rather they, chose. So I really like this. For me, it was, after seeing a lot of entries with a lot of, on occasion, very technical stuff, also maybe a little bit of a background, I really don't like candy, but I spent a ton of time looking at this because it sort of resonated like this is extremely cool. Without any background, like I can play around with these simple slicers and make a selection, right? If you check this, the final outcome is always different, answering to my selection in the slicers, and so really cool stuff. Very simple again. Considering the challenge prompt, for me, this was something that's exactly what I was looking for, right? So maybe not businessy, maybe not super scientific, but the theme is Halloween. We are giving away candy, and like again, to me, this is the perfect sweet spot between the two technical and the fun, the fun part. So really great stuff from Pascal.
Yeah, I love this one. Or go ahead.
I was going to say two quick things. One, I loved your play on words. This was the sweet spot. But two, I also, when I was playing around with Pascal's project, I also really liked that if you hover over any of the names of the suites, you should get a tooltip of some sort that will tell you a little bit about each of them. So it's cool, just like, yes, at the outlook, it looks very simple, and it is very simple. But if you wanted to have more information, I liked the fact that he kind of allowed you to dig in just a little bit more than just that plain, here's the top three of this particular combination. So I thought this was a really well done project.
Yeah, it brought us up to your point. I mean, you said it wasn't that scientific and, something to that effect. But I think that, like, again, part of this challenge is it's a fun holiday, so it should be fun, but like he did plenty of work in the background using really strong analytics, and a lot of the times, and this is what I was looking for, because the prompt was so clear: recommend 3 candies that appeal to all tastes. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be this complex visualization, as long as it's a tool that delivers and has some reasoning behind it. And that's really what I was looking for. So it's really good to see one of our cohort rock stars show up in one of these finalists. I really like this entry as well.
Exactly to your point. Like, there is a whole engine, there is a whole mathematical engine behind these numbers, but we don't see it, and we don't necessarily need to see it, right? We don't always have to see all the complex charts and everything. Like, as a finished product, this is what I was looking for, and this is it. I don't really need to understand, if I don't want to, everything that took us from the raw data to here.
I mean, if you think about if we think about the conversation his neighbor Sally was having, right? They're talking about these in very like heuristic terms. They're not thinking about like, oh, this is a 99th percentile price. They're just saying, is it a combination of price, quality, and sugar content? And I think these categories do a good job of summarizing that and simplifying it for like the consumer and the realistic user of this type of tool. So I think it's pretty cool.
No, for sure. Like, and even the fact that they chose the categories outright, which are, I mean, maybe if we run some sort of algorithm against this, maybe we come up with 7 different categories based on the numbers alone. But we are thinking about Sally, right? Sally is, I'm imagining, an elderly lady on the porch who has been giving away candy for her entire life, and like, she knows what the kids want, right? Maybe we don't have to dig through all the different machine learning algorithms to figure this one out. I was, as somebody who is first not very familiar with this is, as far as I know, mostly a US thing. Maybe wrong, but definitely not a thing from where I'm from. But as somebody who is not familiar, I really enjoyed it.
All right, so this was such a fun challenge to see these entries for, and I'm really excited to be presenting Marek's entry for this particular challenge. It had such a unique approach, and I had such a good time going through it. I laughed out loud a couple of times, so it was just a lot of fun. Kind of starting with about this project, typically I kind of avoid projects that have a shorter about section. I like to kind of see a little bit more of the reasoning that was kind of put into it and the choices that the person made. But I felt like this was a really good summary for exactly why Marek made the choices he did. Kind of talked about how he uses pandas to choose that specific combination of treats. And that, he had 3 potential scenarios here. So a combination with the best overall winning, combination with the lowest possible sugar, or a combination with the lowest possible price. So there was kind of 3 different combinations that we were looking at there. I also really appreciated the fact that Marek called out that while this approach does work for a smaller data set, speed and efficiency would probably become quite an issue if you were using a larger data set. So, for I think 85 candies, this worked really well, but kind of, anything much bigger could potentially start to see some problems there. You'll also kind of see in a second, once I show you the project, that Marek definitely chose an unusual approach for his data viz. But I thought it was a great call as to why he chose that approach specifically. Like he says, this really small data set that he ended up with didn't really offer much potential for data viz, which we kind of did just see in Pascal's, that there isn't a ton of room for data viz. And, I could be proven wrong further down the line as we go through some of these projects. But, from what I have seen, it does look like he's made a really good choice with that. So kind of given that context, I think that we can really appreciate his approach even more. Getting started with this report, I automatically really liked the feel and the humor in it. It kind of reminds me, I think especially this like pixelated image kind of reminds me of an old video game. And Marek actually also did mention that he used AI generated images in the background, which is, I think, a perfectly reasonable way to go about this. But I'll kind of walk you through the way that I did this the first time around. So you can click on start. There is a whole kind of story that I think it's absolutely worth going through and reading. I will not read it to you out loud right now, but there is a whole story behind this. And then you kind of continue to go through and click on the button. And then you get to a point where you're asked to be made the choice of trick or treat. I originally did choose trick. And I was a little bit nervous when I saw this visualization. I was kind of like, I don't know how this could make it into the finals. But then I did read the text up above and I saw, this is obviously somewhat of a joke. So I did what Marek suggested and I clicked on it to fix it. And I broke Power BI. So I almost exited and then I tried to get help. And, when I scrolled over that, it just turned into boo, which meant I did not even have the option of doing that. So when I clicked run away, I got back to the trick or treat page. And this time I picked the correct option, which is treat. And from here, I am able to choose one of three things. So, I can click on, let's try the treat that everyone loves. And it takes me to the three treats that kind of score the highest across the board. And I like the way that Marek kind of really did simplify this visualization. So he really just put this pumpkin, for the treats that fulfilled these particular characteristics. And if it did not, there's no pumpkin there. So I think, again, kind of thinking back to that, like the audience of this, it's pretty intuitive. It makes sense. If you're looking at this, you'll see that the Snickers is a bar. It has caramel. It has chocolate. It has peanuts and it has nougat. However you say that word. Yeah. So I thought it was a really, really easy way of doing this. And the other thing too here is, if you click on the candy specifically, it does update to that candy's corresponding kind of percentages. So I could choose this combo and end the game, or I can go back and choose again. And this time it's talking about the sugar. So again, kind of thinking about this is going to be the lowest sugar percent. And the last one here is that price. So it's going to offer the ones that are the lowest price. So I thought this was such a fun approach to this project. I did laugh out loud a couple of times, particularly at that really horrendous tree map. If I'm being picky, there are a few things that I would love to see changed in a future iteration. It does look like this win percentage turned into an actual percent. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that this is just really a decimal with the percent sign after it. So it's a quick and easy fix to make, but I do think it would make it a little bit more clear. And the other thing is, while I do think that Marek did a great job with the space that the write-up that he provided, I would love to see a little bit more insight into the approach. I would love to see some of the Python that he wrote. But overall, this was such a unique approach, and I thought it was a really well thought out and really well done.
I have to admit that I didn't dig as much. I did finish the game once or twice. I never clicked on trick. And yeah, to your point, Lauren, it's really, really, really a lot of fun. It Me personally, it reminded, I don't know how big of a gamer each and every one of you here is, but like those early iterations of Final Fantasy and games like that with the graphics and the choices and the dialogue definitely brought back some memories. Really fun stuff from Marek.
I have to say, Lauren, I laughed out loud when I first clicked Trick 2, and when I tried to click on that, I forget what it was that it goes into like the boo. I just love that. Yeah, it's just such a fun twist on to his point, right? Like, okay, I got the answer I wanted. How do I visualize it? I don't think visualizing is the avenue whatsoever. So let's just have fun with it. And I think they did an amazing job doing so. And I will say, I love I know we're going to see that in a number of other finalists too. But the approach of just looking at combinations that satisfy at least like all of the criteria or taste profiles or however you want to call them at least once. And then that kind of being your, all right, we're catering to, trick or treaters of all tastes. Now let's see like how we filter those by. Is it by win percentage, price, or sugar content, which is the options here. So I thought that was very smart.
Yeah, I'll add that to Ricky's point, like a visual wasn't forced. I love it when you analysts like really think through what is needed by the end user. And in this case, an adventure for Halloween seems pretty perfect. So
Yeah, I think that storytelling aspect is really, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I do think that this certainly told a story in more than one way. So, I thought it was just a lot of fun to kind of go through and see what he added in there.
Yeah, so Agata's was another very simple but effective project submission. I think that we're kind of seeing a theme here, but again, as I mentioned before, one of the things I was looking for overall was, did you answer the prompt in a succinct way? And was it very easy for me to understand what your recommendations were? And I think Agata hit that very well. Her write-up is really nice. It's brief, but effective. So she states what her goal is. She wants to make sure that there are 3 candies that satisfy the taste of every trick-or-treater, which was the prompt. And then she goes into her assumptions, which sort of back up the calculations behind how she chose her final 3 candies. The first one was that all 9 taste profiles needed to be checked. So basically, she looked at all combinations of 85 candies and made sure that, and basically eliminated any group of candies that didn't check all 9 of those boxes. From there, then she looked at the popularity of the candies within them and found the most popular candies. She had a little bit of variation on sweetness, and the price was the least important factor. But she did include popularity, sweetness, and price as factors in this sort of index measure that she created after filtering only to combinations of candies that satisfied the taste profiles of every candy. So I like that she included her Python code, just really nice, simple Python functions, but she looked for groups of candies that hit all 9 of these boxes. We saw these in other presentations, but chocolate, fruity, caramel, peanut, or nutty, nougat, etc. And then from there, once she got rid of the combinations that didn't satisfy all of those taste profiles, she calculated the average popularity, the sugar difference, sugar content of each candy, as well as the price. And then she created the standardized score in Excel. So a nice combination of using Python and Excel here. And then she created a weighted average of the popularity, sugar level, and price to make sure that she had distinct sugar levels within these popularity and price combinations. So popularity is most important with a weight of 0.6. The variation in sugar was a weight of 0.3. And then the price was the lowest weight at 0.1. And then she used Canva to visualize this. And again, kind of a common theme with these first 3 presentations is that there really isn't this insanely complicated dashboard. We just get her perfect trio, Snickers, Nerds, and Twix, which if you looked at Pascal's, this is the same combination that he recommended if you were focused on popularity, I believe. And I think there's one other presentation that also has this combination of candies as well. So Snickers hits the chocolate, peanut, nougat, bar, and caramel boxes. We have Nerds, which hits the multi-serving, fruity, and hard. Although personally, having eaten Nerds, I don't know if this really checks the fruity box for me. They just taste like sugar, but not having had these or not being that familiar, this is how the data was labeled. So, can't really nitpick too much there. And then finally Twix, which gets us that wafer, as well as the caramel, chocolate, and bar. But and then for each of these, she also includes the metrics associated with her weighting. But I think this is a really smart and succinct presentation. And it's not as interactive as some of the other ones that we saw, which I think like on one hand, having the ability to weight your own preferences, like we saw with Pascal's and even the prior one, is really nice because different purchasers of candies might have different preferences or might be more sensitive to price. But on the other hand, I do like that this is probably the most direct way to answer this question, which is just what is one way to select the perfect trio of candies. And I think Agata did a really good job defining that and selecting a very good trio of candies. These are three of my favorites. So I'm really happy to see these up here as well.
Yeah, I really love this entry. I feel like the about this project was excellent. Every decision that she made along the way made a lot of sense. And it was just a really custom approach to solving this problem. So I thought that was really clever. And then at the end, this is just so easy to understand. So I thought this was an excellent project.
Yeah, I want to back that up. I was pretty impressed with the just the number of tools she used. I know that doesn't necessarily play the part in the prompt itself, but considering the final outcome, which is spot on to Chris's point, we didn't necessarily expect interactivity in our challenge prompt. I won't take away any points for it, but I won't even take away. I won't also take away points here for not having that sort of custom that option to customize the final outcome. I also very much like the graphics here. Everything leading up to this, right? So the walkthrough through I don't know Python, but even like that, I was able to very easily follow her train of thought and the mathematics that she applied. So just overall, a really, really end-to-end great project.
I also really liked the approach that they took to addressing the sugar, because I think most people either said, let's keep it, low sugar because we don't want to, hype all these children up. But this, I like the approach of like variation in sugar, right? You want to balance the very sweet candies with the not so sweet candies, and looking at it like adding it in that sense, because she could have just gone the lower the better, as she did with price, right? But I love that it was more on like the range of sweetness in the selection, which is pretty neat. Granted, I think the end result, to your point, Chris, we saw it in Marek's. I think we're going to see it in mine as well, or John's rather, that they had that final selection without really taking that part into consideration. But I still thought that it was a great, just kind of clever way of approaching sugar.
Yeah, and personally, and maybe this speaks to the benefit of interactivity, but like I would love to play with her weightings, right? Because 0.6, 0.3, 0.1, like, she sort of states like what her preferences, but those are somewhat arbitrary. So again, just being able to play with those weightings and see what pops out depending on how those change would be very interesting. But again, yeah, I'm pretty like impressed with how she ended up with this result here.
All right, I'll be reviewing Andy's submission, and there were two things that stood out to me from the very beginning. Was one is this is truly a data-driven approach, and second, I really like the clear finding summary at the end. So if we start with the about this project section, Andy took a really nice approach where he tried 3 different methods to find the top candies, and then he rolled them up all into one. So the 3 methods he used were correlation analysis, sentiment analysis, and MCDA. And then he summarized all those using the rank sum method. And then you can see these are his top 3 candies. So to dive into this a little bit more, let's go into these project images. Okay, so the first thing he did was look at some correlations. And for this section, I thought it was pretty interesting when he looked at the top attributes associated with high win percentages. You can see that chocolate candy bars and peanutty almondy candy, they all end up at the top. So I thought that was a really nice visualization to show that. Some things in this are a little bit less clear, like this value by attribute. I don't know if it adds to this section. And then down here, he's also mentioning principal component analysis, which is a way to summarize a lot of attributes in fewer ones. And those things are called out here, but they're not specified in detail. So to simplify this section, I would just say just keeping this correlation analysis portion would be great. And if you look at the top 3 candies based on the correlation analysis, all these candies here are chocolatey bars and peanutty almondy. And so I think that's just like a simpler way of summarizing this correlation analysis section. The next section was a sentiment analysis section. And for this one, I come from an NLP background, natural language processing. So I originally thought this section would be on looking at text data. But then after reading it, it's sorted actually by win percent. So for this section, I would say this is a great way of looking at the top candies. But instead of calling it sentiment analysis, I would call it something like top voted candies. And you can see these are the top voted candies here. And then finally, for this MCDA section, MCDA is basically applying weightings to attributes. So there are weights applied to the attributes of sugar percent, price percent, and the candy attributes, and then they're ranked in some way. And I would say this is a really cool way of doing this analysis, but because there's not much room on this page, there aren't many details as to what those weights were. So this is another situation where I think these techniques are great, but you can either go for the techniques and explain them more in detail or go for the visualization and simplify it. And I think in this case, I would go with the visualization because this is such a nice, clean approach. But those were the three approaches. And it comes to this visualization here, which is my favorite of the whole submission, where we're using the rank sum method, which is basically these are the three types of analysis that Andy did. And you can see this was a top candy for this analysis, top candy for this analysis, and so on. And then you sum up the votes across the three techniques. And I thought that was really well done within this visual. And then you can see that the top candies are Snickers, Twix, and Reese's. And then there's this extra scatter plot on the right here, which is kind of interesting. It shows the win percentage along with the sugar percentage. And then the top candies all won a lot and they had a lot of sugar. So I would say overall, I thought this was a really nice entry that was data driven, which was one key piece of this challenge. And then also, I just thought the submission was so clean and he did a really good job guiding us through all these really complex techniques that he used in a simplified way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like here. I think the other thing that I guess the only thing I would push or like call out here when we think about the prompt is like all of the things that were recommended are very chocolatey treats, which like if we think about all tastes of candy enjoyers, like this might fall a little bit short because there aren't any non-chocolate options. So if someone was allergic or had other tastes, like we might not satisfy this using just, I think it's very popularity driven or like win percentage driven, which is what I'm saying. But like the combination doesn't necessarily meet all of those tastes compared to some of the other entries that we saw.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Chris. I was even, I mean, I should have known this, but when I saw that final result, I was like, is that not just what you'd get by sorting by popularity? Of course you don't. You can see that in the sentiment analysis column, right? That's not the top three, but I agree. Like it seems like it just kind of filtered out the most popular. It was just using three different approaches of quantifying what most popular it is, right? Which is fair enough. I do wish it had satisfied that extra piece of the prompt and like trying to appeal to a wide variety of tastes. But yeah, I would be interesting to see how you could actually incorporate those sort of maybe limitations or constraints into the same kind of type of analysis. Maybe it's by doing the same thing but for combinations and instead of for individual candy. All right. So I think John's honestly, once I spent a little bit more time on this one, it might be one of the like I think most interesting challenge entries that I've seen in a long time, mostly because it's both very technically impressive while also having that whimsical and interactive factor that we've seen from some of the other finalists here. It kind of reminds me of some of Jasmin's work in the past, but I think the technicality is here as well, which is pretty cool. So I know we've seen a lot of different approaches for addressing the trick-or-treaters of all tastes part of the prompt. Some people, I know, Alice, you did, chose to cluster the data. We didn't really see any of those in the finalists here. Others, we saw also just simply split it up into, chocolate versus fruity or chocolate, nutty, and fruity, and that kind of appealed to everyone. Other people didn't take those into consideration. Here, like with Agata, and I think Marek did this as well, they went with the combination approach, right, to making sure that the combinations would satisfy all of the 9 different taste profiles. So you can see here at the top, you've got 85 candies total. They make up a total of 98,770 combinations. So if you put them in, groups of 3, but only 159 of those combinations actually satisfy all of those flavor profiles, which I thought was very interesting. You have the top 10 strictly by popularity here. And you can see, because it was a very similar approach to Agata, we have the same result at the end, right? Nerds, Snickers, and Twix. And you have the scatter plot here, which plots the combinations using price and sugar. It's plotting the top 10. And the coolest thing about this one, and I know, Chris, you mentioned that you maybe wished you could have interacted a little bit with some of the parameters in Agatas. You can actually do a lot of that stuff here, and it kind of changes everything, which I think is cool. So, for example, we have taste over here. Maybe I have kids that are allergic to nuts. So maybe like that's out of the question. I can't have anything that includes nut, right? So I can just click on this here. That's going to toggle that off. So now we have 124 contenders that satisfy now all 8 of the criteria. And this is the top 10. We've got Milky Way, Nerds, and Twix as the top option, and you can see it here. Maybe you want to go with the one with the least sugar out of this top 10. Well, you can just choose this one here. And John does call out. You'll see that the tooltips aren't loading. He calls that out. It's like a Power BI error that he noticed. Here's the like community thread. All you really need to do is kind of toggle on and off one of these filters. And if I go back, maybe I want to go with this one, which is actually Milky Way, Smarties, Candies, and Twix if I want to go, from these top 10, the one with the least amount of sugar. And the cool thing is not only can you toggle on the taste, but you can also toggle some of these constraints, which play around with the prices and the sugars. I don't remember whose entry it was. I don't know if it was in the finalists, but someone mentioned that, I want to be the house with the least amount of sugar content because moms love that. But I also want to have the most expensive candy because I know people, notice that kind of stuff. So maybe we want to go low sugar and expensive. Let's toggle the rest off, see what we get. And if we do that, it looks like now we have Milky Way, Smarties, Candies, and Twix. And you can see from this scatter plot that we're focusing on this quadrant now, right? Price on the top end and sugar on the low end. And again, if we wanted to go maybe with the least sugar, we could choose this one here. And again, we've got that tooltip error, which is fine. But I just thought that was really fun. And if I go back and retoggle this so I can see the tooltips, I think the final really cool piece of this entire entry was that you've got this like row of characters here that guide you through how his entire report works. So you've got the skeleton crew. And if I hover over here, got Zen Boney talking about tastes. You've got Sir Scollington talking about what the constraints do. You've got Skull Angel talking about the candies. At the end, you've got, I think, a joke here by what's the skeleton's favorite plant? A bonsai tree. And then the witches kind of show, you can actually see that same chart that I think we saw in, I think it was Marek's, where you have, the top one here, which is Milky Way, Twix, and Smartie, exactly which one of the criteria each one of those satisfies, right? Which I think was pretty cool. In this case, it's only 8 because you'll see that Nutty isn't here because we had filtered that one off. So again, it was just very cool way of just using, Halloween characters and that theme, and ultimately doing like a very cool comprehensive analysis. I actually did like this visualization. I know, Alice, you did a scatter plot plotting candies, right? Like individual candies, but I liked using the combinations in here as well, which I thought was clever. So yeah, I mean, I just really enjoyed this one. I think it kind of had the best of both worlds where it took a clever approach to finding the good combinations, but also letting you play around with it and just have a little bit of a laugh as well with some of the extra stuff in there. So I really like John's. I really liked all of these, honestly, in this challenge. It's just been great to see all of them. So, yeah.
So I actually, I know that we've said a couple of times, data visualization is a little bit not challenging, but it's just different here. And I also understand that KPIs are not necessarily, or KPI cards are not necessarily data viz, but I really like the fact that he added this additional kind of context of, there are in this particular, set of circumstances, there are 71 candies that makes up over 9,000 combinations, but only 19 of them are contenders. I think that's a really, really cool kind of extra thing that I don't know that anybody else did. Definitely not in the finalists that we've seen, but this was a really just a cool addition. And I agree. The characters kind of also just make this a lot of fun and a lot more whimsical. So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, if I had to nitpick anything, I would just say that the way that the winners are displayed is a little bit of a bummer. It's just, these type separated candies. I know that's very minor, but it's almost, I just wish there was almost everything else is just so visually appealing and really fun. And then the winner is just this small piece of text on the side. But that's literally the only thing I can really critique with this. This is really fun.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was even hoping that the winner title will somehow stand out from these other candies, combos, contenders, top 10. but the way it is right now, it just blends in, and you actually have to look for it on the dashboard. But to your point, otherwise, it's really, really very awesome.
That's a great point, and I do agree that like in the stock view, yeah, it's kind of lost there on the right. There's no like you have to kind of end up. What I will say, if you actually hover on the winner, which is this green one, there's like extra. I think they even added extra data because you can see there's a column like Milky Way created in 1923 by Mars. Like they even added extra context around the candy bar that's got a description about with it as well. And I think one of these, which again they could have highlighted, one of these actually talks about the winner here beyond that one. So you'll see Milky Way, so smooth nougat, creamy caramel, and rich chocolate. Take a bite of the Milky Way, like colorful, tangy, and fun first. So they added those like elements that make it so that they cover all the different tastes in like a sentence form, which I thought was clever. But to both of your points, it doesn't really stand out, and you kind of have to dig through it to find it, which
that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't notice that feature, but yeah, I feel like if that was just placed under the winner card in place of the text, like that would just be so perfect. But this is incredible. Like this is just another incredible detail, John. Like, wow, it's really cool.
All right. So that's all 5 of our finalists. We could just go back to the main challenge page here. And I guess it's time for the discussion now. I know it's going to be pretty tough, but who do we think did the best job in picking out the ideal candy to give out this Halloween? What do we think?
Can I mention 3 names? Because this is really tough. Like, I would upvote Pascal, Marek, and John.
Those are my 3 as well. Yeah, I'm having a tough time between those.
Okay. How about you, Lauren, Alice?
Those would be my top 3 too. I'm trying to figure out like, do you go for like, I don't even know how you kind of begin to decide because they're all so different and unique, but they have all 3 done such a great job at presenting this data.
What do you think, Alice?
I mean, I'd agree with this. I thought they were all really great. Like I also loved Agata's with the simplicity.
I did too.
Really hard to choose. I mean, yeah, I'd say I liked Agata's. I liked John's. This is a tough one.
So we can include Agata's in the vote, I suppose. I really like that one too. I thought like if you're just going to take 3 minutes to read through one of those and like reach your conclusion and maybe actually make the selection for yourself at home, like this one was pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm game with Agata as well. I was actually, as you were presenting, I was just thinking between her and Marek's, which one to recommend. So if we can accept 4, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and if we start seeing ties, we'll play it as it goes. But I guess we could
make our job even more difficult.
Yeah, Pascal 1, Marek 2, John 3, Agata 4. That works with everyone. Do you have your votes ready? All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've got 3, 2, 2, 4, 1. So I think 2 wins, right? Is that Marek? I'm not right. Oh, yeah. All right, there we go. Awesome. I mean, we voted all across the board. That was pretty cool. So
that was really tough.
That was such a hard one. I just
gave it to Marek because the trick or treat aspect was like the tiebreaker that it really embodied the spirit of Halloween, that mischievousness, but they were all so good.
I was really on the fence between him and John, and I agree. I think that just like the story behind it just kind of added that like little tiny extra oomph that I had to go with it.
Yeah,
I went with Pascal. I went with Pascal, who I was presenting, and I literally thought if I start thinking about this, I'm going to get like undecisive. So let's go with the flow and just vote.
I love it. Tough. I mean, I think it might be one of the first winners with a tree map in there, but it was ironic, so that's actually pretty fun. Now we've had others in the past. We give tree maps too much hate. Anyway, Marek, congratulations. Let's give him a round of applause. That was a great entry. Awesome challenge, everyone. As a prize, you'll be taking home a free annual membership to Maven and a custom Maven Challenge winner t-shirt. So you've got that to look forward to over the holidays. So congratulations. That's it for this one. Thanks everyone who continues to participate. We've got a great one in store for you guys. We've got some collaboration. And yeah, we'll hope to see you there. This was great.